Welcome. Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you so much. I am Otis Landerholm. I'm the founding immigration attorney here at Landerholm Immigration, A.P.C, where we fight for your American dream. Thank you so much for joining us here today. All right, we're here live on Facebook. We're here live on YouTube. And I really appreciate your coming and meeting with me and your attention to this, your attention. You know, today's date, it's the 11th of November, all right? And it's crazy. I am working. I hate to admit it. I am working. It is Veterans Day here in the United States. And I am here working because we made a deal in our firm, and we are working on Thursday, but we're taking Friday off. So tomorrow, Friday, we're closing the firm down to honor the veterans in the United States. And if I had thought about it, ahead of time, I would have had today's topic be about how can veterans, how can military families, right, use various options they have to help their families. How can military families benefit from certain laws for immigration purposes? And so we'll do an episode on that, but that is not the episode that I have prepared today. All right, that's not the episode. And before we get into the episode that I have prepared, I do want to say, if you are a veteran or if you know someone, hey, thank them. Thank them. My grandfather was in the Air Force in World War II. It's like, that's not easy. It's not an easy thing to be. It's not an easy thing to do. And so, the world, right? The world owes a debt of gratitude to people who are willing to take on serious risk for the idea of making the world a safer place. And so if you have taken that on for yourself, hey, my hat comes off for you today, okay? I honor you. So I am Otis Landerholm. I am an immigration lawyer. Today, I'm really excited. We've got another episode here of the Empowered Immigrant Podcast. Remember, at the Empowered Immigrant Live, all right, at the Empowered Immigrant Live, we train, we teach, we inspire, and we empower immigrants to make the most out of immigration law and to make the most out of their lives. Today, our theme is how do we reopen a case through marriage or through family? How do you reopen a case, right, if you've gotten married to a U.S. citizen? How do you reopen a case if you've got kids who are U.S. citizens who can petition for you or green card holders or something like that, okay? Thank you to everyone who asked their questions. And so we've got 30 minutes, as we always do. We'll discuss this in English, then we'll do the episode in Spanish. Thank you again for being here. If you speak Spanish, please join us in 30 minutes and we'll get going, okay? Si usted habla español, pues vamos a estar juntos en unos 30 minutos más para hacerlo en español. All right, awesome. So before we get to your questions, as always, I like to discuss the basics, okay? So imagine your case in immigration court was denied. Imagine you were ordered deported, but you never left the U.S. Do you know anybody like that? Like, there are thousands of people like that. Deportation order, but they're still here in the U.S. Imagine you never left the U.S. and immigration authorities never looked for you, all right? Imagine the deport order happened years ago. And now, imagine that you've gotten married. You've moved on, right? You lost your case in court. You got a deport order, okay. But you're still here, okay. You fall in love. You get married. You got kids. Imagine your spouse and your children are U.S. citizens. Now, this is a real situation. There are real people that are like, to the tune of thousands, there are people in this exact situation. Do you know anybody in this situation? All right? Maybe you know someone in this situation and you just don't know that you know someone. In other words, maybe people don't walk around advertising, hey, look, I lost my case in court and I've got a deportation order. But actually, it could be your neighbor. Actually, it could be that person who, who has, who's brings their kids to your school, right? Maybe the parents of your children's friends, the parents of your children's friends in school, right? And so the question is, okay, for people that are in that situation, what can they do? What options does a person have? What options do I have through my family to reopen my case and to apply for the green card? And now that's a great question. And to jump right to it, typically there are two big options. There's actually some other options too. But if the question is, how do we do it through the family? There are two big options. What are they? Option one, we file a motion to reopen that deportation order. We say, hey, judge, hey, Board of Immigration Appeals, can we reopen that case and then file for a green card? Option number two is we consular process, all right? We consular process and we file a waiver of the deportation order. Now, those are the two options. In my opinion, the best option is almost always the first one. You file that motion to reopen whenever possible, all right? Because if you file a motion to reopen, you can fix or get rid of that deportation order. But sometimes it's not possible to do that, and sometimes it might not be strategic. You might not have a much of an argument for it, right? In order to do the motion to reopen, all right, and I've got different videos that explains motions to reopen. We could put a link to those or something like that. You could do a YouTube search for our, how to reopen an immigration case. There are like 7 different ways to reopen a case, but with a family context, the most frequent are one, if we can show that your prior attorney committed ineffective assistance of counsel, they didn't do a good job, all right? Or 2, if we can show that you never received notice of your hearing and that's why you were removed, okay? Or 3, we can argue or ask that the court will reopen your case in their discretion. All right, we call this a sua sponte motion to reopen. Now, there are other ways too. There's motions to reopen based on asylum, based on VAWA, based on other things. I recommend doing a full consultation to get to the bottom of that stuff. All right, we have a video that explains all of that also if you want to check that out. Okay, and so great, motions to reopen. That's a great thing. What happens if you win the motion to reopen? Basically, now you're in court again. And now you would have the opportunity to file for a green card, often through your family, in front of the judge. All right? Now, some people are eligible for that, and some people are not. Okay? And so what if you're not? And what if that first option is not possible? Well, sometimes that happens. Like, for example, what if you were literally deported? All right? Or what if you left the United States after a deportation order? Which that actually technically deports yourself. Or what if you're not eligible to reopen that case to begin with and you have a U.S. citizen spouse or kids? Now here's the thing, you might be able to waive the deportation order and come back. And this is what's called an I-212 waiver. I-212 waiver. This is a discretionary waiver, permission to re-enter the U.S. after a deportation order. Now, the main thing, I want everybody to hear me, the main thing that somebody's got to know is if you were deported, all right, if you were deported or if you left or if you leave to consular process the case, all right, do not re-enter the U.S. unlawfully. Because if you re-enter unlawfully, you will trigger a permanent bar. All right, you will no longer be eligible for an I-212 waiver. It's also true where if you have certain other inadmissibility bars, a I-212 waiver might not work. All right, so talk with an immigration lawyer first, but sometimes it is possible. And I just want you to know that. But before you do anything, okay, motion to reopen, I-212 waiver, those are the two big options. Before doing anything, please, please get good, sound legal advice. You want good, sound legal advice. All right, so now that's all I wanted to say about how the process works and the law. Now I want to answer your questions, all right? So I just got a couple questions. I know it's a holiday out there. Maybe people are out having fun. If you are watching and if you have questions, please send them to me, all right? I'd love to answer them. And so the first question I have from Clarissa. Clarissa, thank you for your question. Clarissa, you say, hi, I'm 20 years old and I'm trying to see if I can get my dad papers, but he has a criminal record. Is it still possible? The answer, well, Clarissa, thank you for that question. That's a great question. All right? That is a great question. Now, in order to answer it, I would want to ask you a lot of other questions. Like, for example, is your dad here in the U.S.? All right? And if he is in the U.S., how did he enter the U.S.? Like, did he enter with some kind of visa? Did he have a green card? Was he ever caught crossing the border? Does he have a deportation order? Depending on these answers, you might be able to help him. All right? Right? Like typically, if he were to have entered the U.S. with a visa, and now you're 20, so you've got to wait until you're 21, but then once you're 21, if you're a U.S. citizen, you can petition for your father. The question is, what about his situation? Can he use that petition to get a green card? And maybe, the answer is maybe. Yes, we will need to review carefully his criminal record. And we'll need to determine whether or not it would be helpful for him, whether or not it would be useful and worthwhile for him to apply for a green card. So Clarissa, the takeaway is get good advice about it. All right? He might be eligible. Like my best advice, hey, give us a call. Come in with your dad and let's talk it over. And let's look into the facts a little bit more with more detail, and we can see whether or not there's a case that we can help your father with. All right? So Clarissa, thank you so much. Clarissa, thank you so much. And yeah, give us a call. I'd love to meet you. All right, and love to see if we can help you with that. All right, question number 2 is from Dimas. Dimas, thank you so much. So your question is, I have my petition approved, and I have to leave the U.S. to request the waiver. How much time does that process take? Dimas, wow, thank you. All right, thank you so much. Waiver cases, they are stressful cases. All right, that's a stressful situation. I'm glad that your petition was approved. All right, and so don't leave the U.S. without fully explaining your situation with an attorney and looking at your options. Some waivers, the I-601A, for example, the I-601A waiver can be filed here in the U.S., all right? Some green card cases can be filed here in the U.S., and sometimes it causes a problem for you to leave the U.S. And so, you want to talk to an immigration lawyer first. Mr. Tusk, I see you on here. Thank you so much for being here. I got your question. I'll answer it in a little bit. Thank you. That's awesome. So, and if anybody else out there has questions, hey, bring them on. I love it. So don't leave. Dimas, listen to me. Don't leave without speaking to your lawyer. If everything is done properly, you should only go to that consular interview once everything is already waived, if possible. All right? Sometimes that's not possible, but get your waiver first. And you should only need to go to your medical appointment, to your interview, and then to wait for your passport to be returned with the visa in it. So we're talking 3 weeks approximately, 3 weeks to a month approximately, depending on the country, is all that it should take to consular process a case. But again, don't leave without going over all those details with an immigration lawyer, because things can go wrong once you leave the United States, and then you wouldn't have a visa to come back in. So you want to be careful about it. All right. Dimas, if my office can help you or if my firm can help you in any way, please give us a call. All right, the next question comes from Heba. All right, Heba, thank you so much for your question. Your question is, I have asylum approved. It says I'm an approved asylum since 2018. You mean, okay, your asylum case was approved since 2018, and I've been applying for work authorization every year. This year, they asked me for the DS 2019, and they put me in J1 status, I think, by mistake. I had replied to them that I'm not a student, I'm an asylee, but they denied my case. What should I do? Okay, Heba, thank you. This is a great question. It's a stressful situation that you're in. Someone was confused, and my guess is that a lawyer or someone who really knows what they're doing, my guess is they did not help you with your request for work authorization, because if they were asking for a DS 2019, if they're asking for a J1 waiver, then it sounds like the work permit was applied for under the wrong category. All right? When you apply for a work permit, you have to list the category that you're eligible for work authorization under. And so when you renew your work permit, you don't want to check the box and write the category that you're renewing it under a J1 visa. You want to say you're renewing it under your asylum case. If you won asylum already, that's an A5, depending on how your asylum case was approved and if you're the principal or a derivative, it's an A5 category on the I-765, which is the form to file for your work permit. So that, make sure you're filing under the proper category. And if you have questions about that, Heba, please feel free to contact our office. We'd be happy to help you with that. But that's based on your question, it sounds like that's the issue. Don't worry about your asylum case. It sounds like you've won asylum. You've got an approved asylum case. A problem with the work card doesn't mean you've lost asylum, right? It just means you probably filed the work authorization card under the wrong category. And here's the thing, Heba. If you won asylum in 2018, hey, file for your green card. All right? Be done with this work authorization stuff. File for your green card. Now, some people are not eligible for that if you won like withholding of removal instead of asylum. But if you have questions, hey, let's talk it over. I'd love to look into that with you. All right. The next question here comes from Mario. Mario, thank you so much. So Mario asks, I wanted to ask if I can fix my papers through my wife, who's a U.S. citizen. The problem is I was deported with expedited removal in 2008, and then I re-entered the U.S. in 2009. They didn't detect me, and I've been in California ever since. All right, I got it. Mario, thank you. My heart goes out to you. Thank you so much for being here with me, and thank you for asking this question. So here's the truth, right? Unfortunately, the law says that when a person was ordered removed, right, even through quote-unquote expedited removal, if you were removed, and if you then unlawfully re-entered afterwards, got it? So not only were you physically deported, but then you unlawfully re-entered afterwards, you trigger a permanent bar against you. Okay? So you got a permanent bar. There will likely be no option through your wife. Neither the motion to reopen nor the waiver will directly work. Okay? But my best advice, Mario, my best advice in your opinion is to first run FOIAs. All right? Request the records from Border Patrol. Let's really look and make sure that it was an expedited removal order, because if it was, it will not work. But if it wasn't, then maybe you would have a case. All right? Expedited removal is awful, and I'm sorry to hear that you're in that situation. But it's like you want to know 100% that, yes, in fact, it was expedited removal, and that's why we really want to request those records, carefully review them, and see if there might be a possible argument around it. Okay? All right, I've got a story about that, but before I get to that, I'll get to our question here. So our question next is from Mr. Tusk. So Mr. Tusk, thank you. right? Hello, nice to meet you. Thank you for being here. So, Mr. Tess, you ask, please, what does it mean to have a case to be administratively closed? A friend refiled for an adjustment of status after being previously denied and put in immigration court. Okay, administrative closure, Mr. Tess, thank you so much for your question. It's great. Administrative closure is a mechanism, it is a way, it is a tool that the immigration judges can use to get a case off of their calendar, right? It means you do not have a deportation order. 2 thumbs up about that. You do not have a deportation order, so you're not deported, but it also means that your case has not been finally decided. You don't have any hearings coming up. Your case is closed. All right? It's just kind of it's kind of stuck, closed in front of the judge. And so when you're at that level, when you're in court but your case is closed, you have the option to recalendar and start fighting your case again if you want to, or the government has the option to recalendar and start fighting your case if they want to. All right? And so if the government wanted to start a deportation process against you, again, they could. And if you want to get in front of the judge to say, hey, look, I'm now married to a U.S. citizen, I've got kids, I want to file, I want to get this thing finalized, get me a document, get me a green card, get me some status, you have the power to ask the judge to recalendar also. Got it? That's administrative closure. It basically just closes the case. Either you or the government have the power to put it back in court. All right. Hey, everyone, those are all the questions that I got. Thank you all so much for asking them. Now let me tell you a story, okay? Once I had a client who thought that he had a deportation order. Okay? He thought he had a deportation order. He thought he had been deported. He had been caught crossing the border, and he was sent back to Mexico. And he thought, and he came into my office believing that there was a permanent bar against him. Some lawyer that he had met with had explained the permanent bar, and he said he had been deported and he came back afterwards. So yeah, that would be a permanent bar. But we requested the records. And the records came back, and we looked at them, and they showed that, yes, he had been caught, all right? He had been caught by the border, by Border Patrol, but that Border Patrol listed it as a voluntary return and not as an expedited removal order, or like not as a deportation order. Those 2 words in the record, voluntary return, made his whole case possible. Got it? And so there it's like we filed the petition from his wife. It was approved. We filed the waiver. It was approved. He left the United States and consular processed, and he won. And now he has a green card. And see, the point is you never know what's in the records until you really review them. You got to review them. You know, don't just walk around believing I have a deportation order. Let's look. Let's read the document. Does it really say that? You know? And why go through all this process? Maybe you're fine. Maybe you're good. You think you've got a deportation order, but maybe you started a business. Maybe you're working. Maybe everything's all good. You know? Well, in the case of this particular client, it's like he was that way. He wanted to get information about it, but he didn't believe he was eligible for anything. He came to the appointment not for him. Get it? Don't do it for you. He didn't come into that appointment for him. He came to that appointment because he loves his wife. It's like he wants his family right? Do it for your family. It kind of brings me back to where I started, which is the whole conversation about military. You know, it's Veterans Day. If you were a vet, what are you fighting for? What are you fighting for? My guess is, if I were to really ask you, my guess is that you're fighting for your family. You're fighting for people that matter to you. That's why you fight an immigration case. It's the same thing. That's it, everybody. That's it. That's all we have time for today. Thank you all so much for those of you who asked your questions. If you didn't ask a question, hey, please send it to me anyway, all right? Or if I haven't answered it for whatever reason, send it to me anyway. I would love to answer it, all right? And if this was useful at all, please subscribe to our channel here in YouTube. Please click the notifications bell, all right? We'll get you additional legal updates, news. And hey, if you have an immigration case, please give us a call. We are here to help, all right? Thank you all so much. We'll see you on the next episode of the Empowered Immigrant Live. Thanks a lot. I'm your host, Otis Landerholm.